Jerry Molinari. I served with the United States Marine Corps from 1960 to 1966.
I'm Deborah Hill. I'm from Fresno, California. I graduated from Edison High School. I went to college at Berkeley in California, Cal Berkeley, duh. I went into the military in 1987.
My name is Elsie Evans. I was a private first class specialist in the service.
My name is Ron Vance. I entered the U.S. Navy in 1971 through 1973. I served in Vietnam those years, and I was in the U.S. Navy.
My name is Nona Harris. I reached the rank of E5 and Sergeant. I'm known as Sarge most of the time. I enlisted in service in October 1965.
My name's Richard Morrison. I was E6, Yeoman First Class, United States Navy.
I served with the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade in Indochina. We ran missions from Thailand throughout Indochina. Upon leaving the Marine Corps, I went on to college, received my Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with a major in economics. Went to work in the insurance and securities area for 20 years until my military injuries caught up with me and had to go on disability. Went on to law school, earned a Juris Doctorate, went on and passed the California bar, and did nothing but pro bono work for 10 years for our brother veterans.
I started out running. I went to basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, in the dead of winter where the snow was still on the ground. California girl, yeah. And then I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for my MOS, which is training for my class. When I first went into the service, I first joined up, I was going to be an air traffic controller. And I found out that the class was more than 2 years long, and I had to enlist for 6 years. I hadn't planned to be hanging around that long, so I took another MOS, which is 71 Lima, Administrative Specialist, and that's what I was learning when I went to my class in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. It was 3 months. While I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, it snowed for the first time in 25 years, and they blamed it on me, and I don't know why, because it don't snow in California. Anyway, I had fun. South Carolina was an absolutely beautiful place. I learned a lot about drill sergeants there. Basic training is one kind of drill sergeant, and advanced individual training, AIT, is a different drill sergeant altogether. It's friendlier.
Well, I started off at Fort Ord in basic training, and then I went to Baltimore, Maryland, the Aberdeen Proving Ground. That's where I learned my AIT, which consists of your job, which you would be actually doing in the service. That's where I learned to handle big equipment and things of that nature. My job consisted of going out recovering equipment that was behind enemy lines. I drove a tank that was equivalent to a tow truck.
I joined the U.S. Navy thinking I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. Right after boot camp, 3 months later, I'm in downtown Saigon. I had Army guys telling me that your ship's out there. The draft was around during that time, and I think 1 year after I went in the Navy, the draft was done. When I joined the Navy, I enlisted and I went down to San Diego for boot camp. That was different from anything that ever happened in my life, okay? Everything you did was wrong. From folding your clothes to going on a smoke break, you got yelled at. My duty station was aboard USS Oklahoma City, CLG-5, and the home port was Yokosuka, Japan. But we spent most of our time in the North China Seas in Vietnam. My job aboard the Oklahoma City was cook. We had 1,400 sailors on there. We fed four meals a day, and every day out at sea was a 19-hour working day.
I had basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and also AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. I was trained as a clerk typist, my MOS 71B20, and from there I was shipped off to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where I worked as a clerk typist in mobility and weapons. In the military, we always had an unspoken commitment. If I got it and I know you need it, then it's yours.
Well, I started out in 1954. I was fresh out of high school. Didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have the grades to go on to college because I didn't like high school. So I went in the Navy.
There's a phrase we use in Marine Corps, Semper Fi, and that actually is short. Semper Fidelis, which is Latin, means always faithful. Any Marine who knows another Marine or never met him before but recognizes he's a Marine, we all have a Marine tattoo or we're wearing Marine logos, will come up and say, Semper Fi, brother. And it's quite a wonderful feeling. I feel very blessed to have made it back home. And although I came home with injuries and subsequently ended my civilian career, I went on, as I said, and got a law degree. And to me, it was an opportunity to pay back. I figured the good Lord kept me around because there was something He had planned for me. And that plan was to help our brother veterans with everything from misdemeanor arrest warrants to getting them the citations they have earned, as well as getting them the military benefits that they earned. It's a very complex corporate bureaucracy that we have to deal with in gaining for veterans to earn and get the benefits that they deserve. So it was my honor to help these men and women receive those benefits or the citations they've earned.
I learned my job. My first duty station was Korea. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm gonna be a long ways from home. But in retrospect, Korea was the best duty I ever had, because overseas is the best duty that you could ever pull. So I was in Korea for 1 year, and it was really fun. I got to get a whole bunch of clothes made and send things to my parents, and you know, it was a hardship tour. They called it a hardship tour because those people who had families couldn't bring their wives and children with them. But it wasn't hardship for me because there was 100 men to each woman. Anyway, that's another story. So I had my 100, you know. Anyway, it was a great place to shop, and Seoul, Korea was beautiful. And I was there during the Olympics. And I got to see FloJo in action. I got to see that battle relay race that United States won, you know, the girls relay team and all that stuff. But, you know, so anyway, it was super exciting. One thing about Korea that I remember is when we got to the stadium for the Olympics, we got there at 6 o'clock in the morning. The gates opened at 7. And when the gates opened, the flowers bloomed. All of these flowers just all opened at one time that said Seoul, 1988. That was like trippy to me because they were not magnetic flowers. They were fresh flowers. How they did that, might have to go back to Korea to find out.
I was actually had orders to go to Vietnam, but I was injured before we went to Vietnam, so I didn't have to actually go and recover anything behind the enemy lines. My training was actually all done in Europe, so we just spent days, you know, tuning our skills that we'd be good at what we were doing and proficient at it.
Our ship was a flagship, and we had 5 and 6 inch guns. We would launch bombs from 13 miles away to the shores of Vietnam. We would get coordinates from Army and Marine Corps, and we would assist them on airstrikes.
I've never felt so much. I feel the same love that I felt when I was in the service. And that's the only time I really feel alive is when I am around other veterans, because I know they're going to have my back regardless.
I did 3 years, was on the East Coast, board ship, made 3 Mediterranean cruises, 3 North Atlantic cruises, and been across the Arctic Circle 3 times. I'm considered what they consider a polar bear. I got out of the Navy in 1957, went back in 58, and I stayed until 1974 when I retired. I was on several different ships. 1967, I was with a squadron, and we went off the coast of Vietnam on the USS Bonhomme Richard. And then I went from there to Hawaii for a second tour and wound up retiring off a ship in Port Hueneme, California. And that's the extent of my service. I did all the paperwork. I've wound up in a paper mill, as they call it, so.
So it was my honor to help these men and women receive those benefits or the citations they've earned. I'll give you one quick example of a World War II veteran who I met. Most of my cases were referrals to me because they were more difficult and would not be handled by regular organizations. So one referral I had was a World War II veteran, happened to be in the Navy. But he went down at the Battle of the Coral Sea. He served on the USS Lexington. It was sunk at the Battle of Coral Sea. And in the process, when they were under attack, they didn't have time, the gunners didn't have time to put on their safety gear, and he lost a great deal of his hearing. He went all of those years without having the benefits and the treatment that he was entitled to because they didn't know about him or he didn't know how to get started. So I applied for his benefits, got him all of the hearing assistance he needed, as well as a monthly compensation to help him with any miscellaneous expenses.
You know, there's a lot of things that happen at war that are, you know, all kind of crazy. And I was in the group of people, you know, who had to tag toes, and you know, so I saw a lot of devastation and, you know, a lot of things going on. But a lot of that didn't happen to us. You know, it was happening to the other people. It wasn't happening to us, and so that made it. It wasn't easy to watch, but it was easier than if it would have been someone I knew.
Well, actually, it was after you were assigned your job in the service. It was more like a 8 to 5 job. You know, you'd go to the motor pool, and you'd hang out at the motor pool, and you know, just work on your equipment to get it ready for. We'd play war games in France, so things of that nature. So we just mostly hung around the motor pool, and you know, just performed tasks that was related to what you were trained to do in the military.
At the time when we were sending those bombs over, I was 19 years old, and just about all the soldiers were 19 years old. And to have opinion one way or the other about, you know, the bombs we were launching, we couldn't. We just couldn't. The president said go, so we went. And we were given orders to send bombs. That's what we did. And I was there in 1972 when President Nixon sent B-52s over, and the war was over with, I think within 2 days. There was 20 years of fighting, and it only took 2 days of dropping bombs from B-52 airplanes, and everybody quit fighting. That was kind of hard, Jim. It's like, because we were out there, and to see that water doing like that. Then the captain came on the squawk box and he said, there has been a presidential order. We're thinking the worst. He's going to nuke the place, right? And it's like, no. The captain said, we're going to take the ship about, and we're going to go out about 6 miles. In a few minutes, you're going to see the water start shaking like that. I'm like, what does that mean? And we did. In a few minutes, we went out, turned about, went about 6 miles out. And the waters were always calm over in Vietnam. And as we could see the water start shaking like that, and we go like, wow, the place is really being blasted over there.
Yeah, the military was definitely a second family. It gave me, well, I had all the camaraderie and support, mentally, physically, you know, emotionally, from everybody on base. If there was a need, I can tell you one time when I was in basic training, I had a sister who she, God rest her soul, had sickle cell. And she had a rare blood type, and it seemed like every time she would go into a serious crisis, they would do a blood transfusion, complete blood transfusion. And I got a letter from the Red Cross asking if, you know, I could be tested for the St. Joseph antibodies, which unfortunately I didn't have, and not anyone on my base. And I showed my commanding officer the letter, and she informed everybody at Fort McClellan the need, and everybody was tested, and there's only 2 girls that had the St. Joseph antibodies that my sister needed, and they gave blood, and then everybody else on base donated blood every chance, you know, every month to replace the blood that she was being given.
One young kid, in fact, he didn't look like he was old enough to be in the Navy. He was 17 years old. His mother had passed away, and his dad got him in the Navy. And we used to have fun with him. Used to send him down to the bosun's locker and tell him to get us a line stretcher for the ship's store line. He'd go down there to get it. He'd come back, they ain't got one. Well, okay. And then we had one guy at this first class I worked for. He sent him down with a bucket, go down to the engine room and get a bucket of steam and bring it up. After about the fourth trip, the guys in the paint locker stopped him, gave him a lid to put on the bucket, told him just sit here. So he stayed there a little while and went back up, and they told him, go up and take this, and when you get up there, just throw it over the side and tell that bosun mate if he wants that steam, go get it. But that was that's the things that went on within your division, within your own people. And you didn't get in an argument. You was on third, like I was in 3rd Division. We had the O2 level. That was the admiral's level. You had 1st and 2nd Division, but there was no fighting even amongst the divisions. Everybody got along. If somebody needed help, hey, we was there to do it.
Veterans Day is to honor all veterans. And it was initially called Armistice Day, which marked the end of World War I. That ended after the battle at the Argonne on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. It was designated as Armistice Day, celebrated throughout the world with all of our allies. In 1958, Congress changed the name to Veterans Day and is celebrated on November 11 each year. In May, we celebrate Memorial Day. Memorial Day is there to dedicate and honor all of our military who lost their lives while on active duty. Armed Forces Day is to honor our active military. It's also celebrated in May.
I'm glad I went to the service. You know, I was trying to get away from Fresno. It was in the 70s and the 80s, and there was a lot of crazy things going on here. I had gone to college and came home and nothing was changing. So I saw a recruiter and, I walked up to him and I went on the delayed entry program for 1 whole year. He taught, he taught me my physical parts, brought my physical parts back to me, running and exercising and stuff. And I went in and the rest is history.
Well, I'll probably go to the cemetery and put some flowers on some uncles of mine who actually served in the military. Other than that, I'll just probably spend time with my family,
I did just over 22 years active duty and reserves in the military. My first stint was 3 years active duty, and then I got in the Navy Reserves, and I stayed in for 16 years.
Wherever we go, we always make a difference.
You'll meet people. You'll get to know people. You'll have friends. A lot of them you'll forget. But once you see them again, well, you'll know who they are. And with different organizations I belong to, you meet a lot of other people. And you get to be friends with them. But you're all military, and we all speak practically the same language. It's just different organizations, but we all understand each other. We're all brothers.
I'd like to hold this up because I want you to be aware, cognizant of the fact that I have a connection to West Fresno, and I'm proud of that connection, and I'm proud of what's being done with regard to the synergy throughout our community in assisting in the West Fresno development. Thank you very much. It was an honor to speak, I hope, with you rather than to you.
My name is Deborah Hill, and I have a connection to West Fresno.
Well, the picture I brought I took when I was over in Europe. We were just a group of soldiers wanted to take some pictures to send home, and just something that I'll always cherish and be able to show my grandkids and family members. So it's just something that I feel very proud to be able to serve in the United States Army and to serve my country diligently. My name is Elsie Evans, and I have a connection with West Fresno, California.
My name is Nona Harris, and I have a connection to West Fresno.
After I received my 20-year letter from the Army National Guard, would sit in the maintenance shop for like 6 months before they told me it was there. And I took the letter right away to my commander and says, "Ma'am, I'm leaving." She said, "You can't leave." Yes, I can too. I have 20 years and 1 day in. And now I'm doing a program here in Fresno about Unsung Heroes. There's a negative stigma about West Fresno. The only thing you hear about comes out of West Fresno is gangs and gangsters. I'm from West Fresno. There's a lot of soldiers who come out of West Fresno, and their stories are not told. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this program called Unsung Heroes. They all have a wonderful story. My name is Ron Vance. I serve the United States Navy and the United States Army, and I have a connection to West Fresno.